Hi there, greetings to you once again. This is part 3, our last part of the introduction to our course, and the topic uh, basic anatomical terminology. This is part 3 of that topic, which is going to fulfill our objectives of gaining knowledge about body cavities, visceral membranes, also called those abdominal pelvic membranes, and then lastly you shall look at the abdominal pelvic regions. What are those? Part 3 is going to tell us what those subtopics are. To start off our part, we start off with body cavities. What are body cavities? Have basically four types of body cavities. Have the cranial cavity, the thoracic cavity. You said cranial, that is a term that is referring to the head region of the human body. So we have the head region cavity, cranial cavity. Have the thoracic cavity, which is the neck region. The chest region. So we have a cavity there in the chest region, and then we have an abdominal cavity in the abdomen. Then lastly, the pelvic cavity, a cavity in the hip regions or the pelvic region of the body. Some literature combines the abdominal and the pelvic regions, and we call it the abdominal pelvic region. So you find some literature classifying the body cavity into three. That is cranial cavity, thoracic cavity, and pelvic cavity. Here, we're classifying them into four, dividing the abdomen and the pelvis into two independent parts. Then we have the abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity. What is a cavity? The cavity is that space. It is a space, an empty space in the human body. But that space is not empty. That is just a definition of a cavity space. But that space is filled with something. There is either a fluid or it is an organ in that space. Some spaces have air, but most of them have organs within them. So a cavity is that space. And if we have the term body cavity, then that is body space, space in the body. And we have said there are four. What is the purpose of these spaces? Why do we bother ourselves about knowing, getting some knowledge about these spaces? Mind you, they are just spaces. Why should we study about spaces? So, spaces in the body help protect particular body organs. They help separate particular body organs from others, and then other spaces are supportive to the internal organs. So they provide support. For example, those organs in which pressure is built. For example, the lungs. As you breathe in, there is that amount of pressure that has to be put on the lungs to expand, to take in air. Or when you breathe out, there is that amount of pressure that has to be put on those lungs to push the air out through our nostrils. So there is a cavity that is surrounding those lungs there, and that cavity plays such roles, protecting the lungs, separating the lungs from other body structures, and then supporting the lungs. Even other body organs, for example, the liver, the stomach, the pancreas, the intestines, all of those are located within cavities, spaces within the body, but those cavities are playing those roles. They are protecting those organs, they are separating those organs from the others, or they are supporting those organs for particular reasons or during particular circumstances. So we basically do have two major types of body cavities in the body classification of body cavities. Mainly have the dorsal and the ventral body cavities. Dorsal, that is the back side of the body, then ventral, that is the front side of the body. So spaces within the body based on the back side and spaces within the body based on the front view. Uh, in this chart here, we have our major arms, that is the dorsal body cavities and the ventral body cavities. Starting off with the dorsal, these ones are the spaces that cushion, that help cushion and protect. Cushion is kind of uh, preventing something from being damaged by pressure that is put on it. So that spacing surrounding those organs in the dorsal cavity, they play such a role, cushioning. Okay, so they cushion and protect the central nervous system. So the organs within the central nervous system are cushioned and protected by the dorsal cavity. And this dorsal cavity is consists of the cranial and the spinal, so the head region cavity and the spinal cavity. The spinal cavity contains the spinal cord, and then the cranial contains the organ known as the brain. So these are the two major organs in the central that make up the central nervous system. The central nervous system is found within the dorsal cavity. On the other hand, we have the ventral body cavity. We may also call it the coelom. Please, it is not coelom, it is coelom. That is spelling. So this ventral side of the body cavities also provides protection, allows organ movement to but some organs that need the movement, for example, the intestine expanding during peristalsis. They need that movement. So the space there will provide such a boom. The lungs also need movement when you're breathing in or breathing out. So they have to move. So that space that is surrounding them will aid in that. And then the ventral body cavity also provides lining to particular organs in a way of preventing friction, damage from friction, crossing against other membranes or organs. So that space provides that to particular organs. And the ventral body cavity is divided into two other major arms, that is the thoracic cavity, chest region, and then the abdominopelvic cavity, that is the abdomen region and the pelvis region of the body. The abdominopelvic cavity contains the peritoneal cavity. What is the peritoneal cavity? Peritoneal cavity consists of the abdominal and the pelvic cavity, where in the abdominal cavity we find particular organs that carry out functions relating to digestion. So those are the digestive organs and glands. Most of them are found within the abdominal cavity. And then the pelvic cavity mostly contains the urinary bladder. This is the hip region where we find the urinary bladder, reproductive organs, and the last portion of our digestive tract. So that is the pelvic cavity. Mm, the thoracic cavity on this side is divided into three other, we call them subcavities, subspaces that are surrounding particular organs. And those subspaces we have the pleural cavity, that one surrounds the lungs. So that space that is surrounding the lungs is called the pleural cavity. Then the mediastinum, this one surrounds the trachea, and the esophagus. So it is within the central region of the thorax, thoracic region, but in the center. So we find it surrounding the esophagus, certain major vessels within that region. So see in our circulatory system, then the trachea. So the last subcavity within the thoracic cavity is the pleural cavity on the left. The other one is on the right, surrounding the right lung, and then this one is on the left, surrounding the left lung. So do you realize the pleural cavity is divided into two, the right pleural cavity and the left pleural cavity. So one surrounds the left lung, the other one surrounds the right lung. But furthermore, the mediastinum also contains another sub cavity, which is the pericardial cavity, and this one is responsible for the heart. So it surrounds the heart, provides protection, uh, allows the heart to move to the pumping of blood, then prevents the heart from providing circumstances of friction with the other neighboring organs or membranes. So that is the pericardial cavity there. So a hint point there about the thoracic cavity. We are usually interested with the organs within the thorax region, thoracic region, that is the heart, the lungs, esophagus, and trachea. So those ones and those major blood vessels, those are the major organs in the thoracic region. And that is our chat about body spaces, body cavities, descriptive chat. So we said have the dorsal body cavity and the ventral body cavity. We have described all this. The dorsal cavity we said has two other cavities. We have the cranial, then the vertebral, uh, the cranial and the spinal, or the spinal. You may also call it the vertebral canal, vertebral cavity. So that is the dorsal. So the cranial is made up of mainly it contains the brain, but there are other organs there. For example, the cranial bones, the skull bones. So that is cranial cavity under the dorsal. Then the vertebral or spinal canal, said contains the spinal cord. Find three membrane layers there, which we call the meninges. So the meninges are three layers that are protecting their surrounding. These are membranes that are surrounding the central nervous system, okay, organs in the central nervous system. So these layers are providing protection to those organs within the central nervous system. And we find those membranes within the vertebral canal or the dorsal cavity, mainly the spinal cavity. Looking now at the ventral body cavity, so we have here we are dividing it into the upper thoracic cavity and the lower abdominal pelvic cavity. The other side we divided into the thoracic and then abdominal pelvic. Abdominal pelvic, we further divided it into two, that is the abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity. And the other second arm of the thoracic we formed there the pleural cavities left and right, and then the mediastinum. Here we are first dividing into the upper thoracic cavity. So we are dividing the ventral body cavity to upper thoracic cavity, the upper part, which is the thoracic cavity, and then the lower part, which is the pelvic cavity. So the thoracic contains still the pleural, the mediastinum, and the pericardial cavity. You said pericardial cavity. Here there is the word cardio there. So that one is relating to the heart. So that is the space surrounding heart. pericardial cavity. Mediastinum, we saw that. Pleural, we said those spaces around the lungs. So the mediastinum is that space, the center of the thoracic region. Find certain organs there, for example, the esophagus, the trachea, certain blood vessels, major blood vessels. That is the thoracic cavity. This is a depiction of the anterior and the posterior view. Basically, it is the side view. Yeah, you can see the posterior and the anterior from the side view, where we are seeing the dorsal cavity and the ventral cavity. Ventral cavity here, which is the frontal view. Anterior has thoracic. This region has abdominal and then pelvic. So you combine those are called abdominopelvic cavity. Particular organs there. And then this is this dorsal side, which is the dorsal cavity, having cranial cavity and spinal cavity as the major components there. Oh, I have also highlighted out two key terms, that is the visceral and parietal, which we are going to see next slides down. Visceral, we said if you have a membrane made up of two layers, then that membrane that is close to the organ itself is called the visceral, that inner membrane. Then that membrane that is away from the organ, outer membrane, is called the parietal membrane. In this case, we are referring to the heart, so we shall call that the pericardium, pericardial cavity. So the visceral pericardium, and then parietal pericardium, considering the spacing and the membranes around the heart. So refer to that as the pericardium. This part B is a depiction of how the heart may appear, how the heart may appear if a fist was made in a balloon. Okay, air would be displaced into different regions, and such a shape may be formed. So such a shape is depicting this heart being surrounded by the cavity, which is the air in the balloon. Then these two membranes that are containing the air inside are the visceral membranes and the parietal membranes. So you have to note that the names of the membranes are obtained from the either the organ that they surround, or in most cases they are obtained from the cavity within. Okay, so those are where the names of the membranes are usually obtained, the cavities that which they are located. This is another depiction of our cavities, body, and some of the associated organs. So we said upper thoracic cavity is made up of pleural cavities and pericardial cavity. We saw that. And the mediastinum. And on the other hand, you have the abdominal pelvic cavity, which is divided into the superior abdominal cavity and the inferior pelvic cavity, which so. And then the viscera. I have not defined the term viscera, but viscera are those organs within the body cavities that we are discussing. So that term is referring to any organ within a particular body cavity. If you are requested to mention, for example, the viscera of the abdominal cavity, then you mention those organs that are found within the abdominal cavity. For example, now we find there stomach, spleen, pancreas, liver, small intestine, and most part of the large intestine. So those are the organs within the abdominal and we call that viscera. Remember, our topic is basic anatomical terminology. So, viscera is that anatomical term that is referring to the organs located within particular body cavities. So, we also looked at this, that is the thoracic and abdominal cavities, but now we are looking at those membranes. What are some of the terms that we use to describe these membranes? We have a term known as serous membrane. What is serous membrane? These are the membranes that cover the viscera. Say the viscera are the organs within the cavities, but now the membranes that line those organs or that contain those organs, that particular location where the cavity provides protection, support, and allows movement. So what are those membranes that surround the viscera, that particular location? The general term given to those membranes is called the serous membrane. Serous membrane is usually dual in nature. It has two layers, and those layers are the visceral layer and the parietal layer. So the serous membranes usually have two layers. That is the visceral and the parietal. The visceral is close to the organ to which that membrane lines. And then the parietal is the outer membrane lining that particular organ. Like the other depiction of the fist into a balloon displacing air. So that is the scenario here. So we have our fist here. So this balloon, these layers of the balloon are the serous membranes. The two layers, the visceral close to the fist, and then this layer of the balloon that is away from the fist is the parietal. So that is something about serous membranes, but the serous membranes are also filled with fluid. Okay? So those membranes that line the organs, some of them are filled with fluid for particular reasons, obviously. For example, provide that fluid provides cushion to those organs so that they are not damaged by friction. So if those membranes, the parietal and visceral, uh, they are providing friction by moving along each other, okay, scratching each other, then they are damaging, and if they damage, uh, end up not having enough protection to that particular organ which they line. So if that organ does not have protection from the serous fluid within the serous membranes, then the organ is also likely to collapse in some way. So the fluid there, that is the role that it mainly plays. And we have several types of serous membranes, not fluids, but membranes. These ones include the pleural membrane, the pericardium membrane, and peritoneal membrane. When you look at this term, go back to our cavities where we had the pleural cavity. So the pleural membranes, or you may call them in plural, uh, pleura. These membranes are lining the cavity within, actually they are lining the lungs, but they are found within the pleural cavity. And then the pericardium, these ones are lining the heart, so they are found within the pericardial cavity, and then the peritoneal, those ones are found within the abdominal pelvic regions, the peritoneal cavity. Okay, so they line the organs within the pelvic regions. The pleural membrane has visceral and parietal pleura, as we discussed, because said serous membranes have two layers, and this type of serous membrane, which we are calling the pleural membrane, is surrounding the lungs, but it still has two layers. That is the pleural parietal pleural, and then the visceral pleural membrane. So the visceral pleural membrane is lining close to the lungs, and then the other one is lining close to the chest wall. So a little away from the lungs, but close to the chest wall. Okay, that is the parietal membrane. And then the pericardium, say that one is relating to the heart, where the visceral pericardium will be lining close to the heart walls, and then the parietal pericardium will be lining close to the chest wall. Peritoneum, that one is relating to the pelvic regions. So any organs located there will have the visceral peritoneum, which is a visceral peritoneal layer or membrane lining close to the organs within the abdominal pelvic region. Then the parietal lining close to the abdominal wall. So this is our depiction of the membranes and the cavities. So where we have the abdominal cavity, find there the abdominal membranes. Where we have the thoracic cavity, we find there the particular serous membranes, but in that case we are referring to the thoracic serous membranes. So if you are requested to mention the three types of thoracic serous membranes, then you should list those relating to the pericardial cavity, those relating to the pleural cavity, and those relating to the mediastinal cavity. And lastly, the abdominal pelvic regions. What are these regions? These are locations that we use in anatomy to describe the location of particular organs within the abdominal pelvic location of the body or region of the body. So these locations we can make 9 locations or we can make 4 locations. If we make 4, those ones are called quadrants. Okay? As we are going to see. So we make those divisions in the abdominal pelvic region, and those divisions are imaginary, but they help in easily locating particular organs within the abdominal pelvic region. So they are imaginary lines dividing the abdominal pelvic area into 9 regions or 4 regions. So these are the 9 regions. We draw 4 lines, 2 vertical lines, 2 horizontal lines at these particular locations. This one close to the nipple on the right, and this one close to the nipple on the left. Then we draw a line there. Then this other line just below the lungs. Then this one crossing through the umbilicus. So the second line. So in the end, we have 9 abdominal pelvic regions where we have the right and left regions. On the right, we have the uppermost being the right hypochondriac region. This one, the right lung close to the breast. Then this one, which is the lumbar region, right side, so it is the right lumbar region. And this one is the iliac region or the inguinal region, so the right side. And then we have the inguinal region or iliac region on the left, lumbar region on the left, hypochondriac region on the left. And then in the center, we have the epigastric region uppermost. The lowermost is the hypogastric region, which is the pubic region. That region just below the umbilicus, but in the center of the abdominal pelvic region. And then the centermost region, which is the umbilical region, a region just above the umbilicus, but not above the lower part of the lungs. That is the umbilical region. So those are the 9 abdominal pelvic regions. areas that we use to locate organs within the abdominal pelvic area. So the quadrants, wherever you see the term quadrant, that means you have something in fours. So we can divide still the abdominal pelvic area into four divisions, which we call it quadrants. And then we locate particular organs within those quadrants. We say these lines are imaginary. So this is the division of the four quadrants. We base on the umbilicus region. That is where we make our medial line. And then also the medial cross section. Then we locate organs here in the upper right quadrant, left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant, right lower quadrant. Locate organs there, and they have been listed here. So if you have any complication in such regions, we start suspecting an abnormality of health in any of those regions that we are listing here. Yeah. So that is the purpose of the dividing the abdominal pelvic region into quadrants or 9 regions. We start suspecting particular organs that might be dysfunctioning or that might have a health condition in terms of the symptoms that have been displayed. So that is the other depiction of the regions, and that one. So the abdominal pelvic regions. This one is regional requires you to name those regions there, 9 regions, and then the associated, some of the associated organs there. Thank you for tuning in, joining in to this class. This was part 3 of our major introduction to the anatomy and physiology course. Next class will be about the cell, basically cell structure and function, which we may call cell biology. Thank you and blessings wherever you are.